The December wind sliced through my thin jacket as I stood on the Mason family estate's doorstep. My mother-in-law's perfectly manicured hand fluttered in a mocking wave before she slammed the heavy oak door in my face. I sucked in a shaky breath, one hand instinctively cradling my growing belly. Just like that, everything had unraveled. My name is Emma Chin. I'm 28 years old, pregnant, and suddenly alone, locked out of the home I'd lived in for the past 3 years. But Victoria Mason had no idea what she had just set in motion. "You'll thank me for this later, James," I heard her say through the door to my husband. "She was never good enough for you. No connections, no family money, just some scholarship girl who got lucky." I held my breath, waiting for James to protest, to defend me, to say anything at all. But silence, the same silence that had crept into our marriage over the past year, thickening like fog as Victoria's influence seeped into every crack. She was right about one thing, though. I had been lucky, just not in the way she thought. 3 years ago, I was a fresh MIT graduate, a software engineer with an AI algorithm that could revolutionize supply chain logistics. James and I met at a tech conference, where I was presenting my research. He was there for Mason Global Logistics, his family's multi-billion-dollar shipping empire. It was love at first sight, or so I thought. The wedding was rushed, small, intimate. Victoria disapproved, of course, but James had insisted. "We don't need their approval," he had told me back then. "We just need each other." Standing in the cold now, my breath forming pale clouds in the air, those words felt like a distant echo. What Victoria didn't realize was that while she spent her days hosting charity galas and questioning my pedigree, I had been working. My algorithm wasn't just a theory anymore, it was real, and it was ready. I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling from cold and adrenaline, and dialed the one person I could always count on. "Maya, it's happening. They kicked me out." My sister didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way," she said. "The apartment's ready. Time for Plan B." Hearing the steel in her voice grounded me. Maya had been my rock ever since we lost our parents in that crash 10 years ago. She was the one who pushed me to keep developing my algorithm, even after I married James. "Never put all your eggs in one basket," she'd warned me once, especially not a golden one. I hadn't fully understood what she meant, until this morning. James had found my prenatal vitamins in the drawer. Instead of happiness, his face twisted into something else, something ugly. "Did you plan this?" His voice was tight. "Is this some kind of trap?" I had stared at him, stunned. "Trap? James, we're married. We talked about having kids." He ran a hand through his hair. "Mother thinks the timing is suspicious, with the company's merger coming up." And there it was, the moment I realized how far gone he was. The man I loved had become nothing more than a pawn in his mother's empire. A sleek black Tesla pulled up to the curb, and Maya stepped out, her expression stormy. She wrapped me in a fierce hug before grabbing my bags. "Those pretentious snobs," she muttered, "just wait until they see what's coming." As we pulled away from the Mason estate, a strange calm settled over me. Victoria thought she was protecting her family's legacy by shutting me out. She had no idea she had just unleashed her biggest threat. Maya glanced at me. "You okay? Stress isn't good for the baby." I placed a hand over my stomach, a tiny kick, a reminder. "I'm fine," I said, a slow smile forming. "Actually, I'm better than fine." She arched a brow. "What are you up to?" I reached into my bag, pulling out my laptop. "Remember how you told me to always have a backup plan?" Maya nodded as she turned onto the highway. "Well," I said, opening my latest simulations, "I have something to show you." On the screen was the future of logistics, an AI-powered system capable of predicting supply chain disruptions, optimizing routes in real time, and slashing costs by nearly 40%. I had built it using Mason Global's own shipping data. James had given me full access when we got married, eager for me to understand his family's business. Victoria had no idea. Maya's eyes widened as she took it all in. "Emma," she said slowly, "what exactly have you been up to?" I met her gaze, my heart hammering. Leveling the playing field. I had been running simulations for months, perfecting the algorithm. Now, it was finally time to put everything into motion. Maya pulled into her building's parking garage and turned to face me. "Emma, do you realize what you have here?" I closed my laptop, my pulse steady. "I do." And so do the venture capitalists I've been meeting with. They're ready to fund chain site, we just need to pull the trigger. A slow grin spread across Maya's face. And Victoria just gave you the perfect excuse to launch. As we rode the elevator to her penthouse, my mind replayed the way Victoria had smirked before slamming that door in my face. She thought she had cast out a gold-digging nobody. In reality, she had just freed her biggest competitor. Maya's apartment was the exact opposite of the Mason estate, modern, warm, and free of judgmental eyes. She had set up the guest room weeks ago, knowing this moment might come. My sister had always been the pragmatic one. Get some rest, she said, helping me unpack. Tomorrow, we start making calls. It's time to show the Masons exactly who they underestimated. That night, as I lay in bed with my hand resting on my stomach, I felt stronger than I had in months. Victoria thought she was protecting her legacy. Instead, she had just given me the push I needed to build my own. My phone buzzed. A text from James. Mother says this is for the best. I'm sorry. I didn't respond. Let him think I was shattered. Let Victoria believe she had won. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I woke to an email from my lead investor, Sarah Chen. No relation, though we often joked about it. Ready when you are. Say the word, and we'll start the funding round. I looked out Maya's window at the city skyline. Mason Global's headquarters loomed over everything, but not for long. Soon, they wouldn't be the only name in logistics. Maya was already up, making coffee and taking calls. She handed me a prenatal vitamin and a glass of orange juice as I stepped into the kitchen. The team's ready, she said, hanging up her phone. We can file the incorporation papers today. You're sure about this? I swallowed the vitamin, thinking about James's accusation. Had I planned this? Not exactly. But I had been prepared for it. I'm sure, I said, opening my laptop. Victoria wants a war. Let's give her one. Maya's lips curled into a sharp smile. Then let's get to work. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings, legal filings, and strategy sessions. Maya's law firm handled everything with ruthless efficiency. By the end of the week, ChainSite was officially incorporated. The initial funding round wasn't just successful, it was oversubscribed. Investors weren't just interested, they were eager. James called. Then called again. I let every message go to voicemail. By the time ChainSite's incorporation hit the business news, his tone had shifted. Emma, what are you doing? Then, the inevitable. Mother's furious. She says you stole company secrets. We could sue you for this. I played the message on speaker. Maya just laughed. Let them try, she said. You accessed that data legally, with full permission. We have James's emails proving it. She was right. I had documented everything, anticipating this exact moment. Victoria Mason hadn't raised a fool, she just never expected her son's wife to be smarter than he was. 6 months later, I stood before a packed conference room at the National Logistics Convention. My hand rested on my now visible baby bump as I prepared to unveil the future of the industry. In the front row sat Mason Global's leadership team, Victoria and James among them. Victoria's face was unreadable, but her clenched jaw told me everything I needed to know. James, meanwhile, looked pale. I took a deep breath and smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady, what you're about to see will change the way we think about supply chain management. I launched into the demonstration, walking the audience through real-time route optimization, predictive analytics, and cost-saving projections. The numbers spoke for themselves. And as expected, Victoria made her move. This is nothing but smoke and mirrors, she declared, standing. Miss Chen claims her system can cut costs by 40%, but where's the proof? Mason Global has been in this industry for generations. We know what's possible and what isn't. I met her gaze, completely unfazed. Excellent question, Mrs. Mason. I let the silence stretch for just a beat longer than necessary. Perhaps your son can answer it, since he's already seen the system in action. All eyes turned to James. He stiffened, his Adam's apple bobbing. He knew exactly what I was referring to, how he had eagerly approved my early tests using Mason Global's data. For the first time in months, I saw something new in his expression. Fear. I don't know what you're talking about, James stammered, but his face betrayed him. Really? I asked, clicking my laptop. A series of emails appeared on the screen behind me, because according to these messages, you were quite impressed with the initial results. In fact, you called them revolutionary and suggested implementing them company-wide. Victoria's face turned scarlet. The emails were damning, not just for their content, but because they disproved every accusation she'd made about me stealing company secrets. James had been my biggest supporter, right up until she turned him against me. After the presentation, investors swarmed around me. Maya took the lead, handling questions and fielding partnership offers with her usual calm and legal expertise. She was in her element, and I couldn't help but feel a rush of gratitude. But as the crowd began to thin, I caught sight of James standing alone at the edge, looking lost. Finally, as the last few people filtered out, he approached me, his face pale. Victoria wasn't in sight. Emma, he said, his voice low, can we talk? I studied him, really looked at him for the first time in months. The man I had once loved seemed smaller, diminished. About what, James? I folded my arms, the bitterness rising in my chest. About how you let your mother kick out your pregnant wife? Or about how you've spent the last 6 months trying to destroy everything I've built? He flinched, guilt flashing across his face. I didn't know about the baby, about any of it, Mother said. That's the problem, I interrupted, my voice hard. Mother said, Mother thinks, Mother knows best. I shook my head, frustration bubbling up. When was the last time you thought for yourself? He shifted, running a hand through his hair. Look, the company's stock dropped 15% after your presentation. Mother's furious. The board is asking questions. Maybe we could work something out. I let out a sharp laugh, bitter and empty. Now you want to work something out? He reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. Actually, I'm not your wife anymore. The divorce papers were delivered to your office this morning. Maya's firm handled everything. I met his eyes, steady and unflinching. You should read them carefully, especially the part about the baby. His face fell, the realization sinking in. Emma, please, that's my child too. I nodded, the words coming out cold. Yes, and you'll have visitation rights once they're born, but you lost the right to be their father the day you chose your mother over your family. Maya appeared at my side, right on cue, her presence grounding me. Everything okay here? She asked, her eyes flicking from me to James. He took a step back, shoulders sagging in defeat. I'm sorry, Emma, for everything. I'm not, I said honestly. Everything that happened led me here. Chainsight is already revolutionizing the industry, and we're just getting started. So thank your mother for me, James. She gave me exactly what I needed, freedom. As he walked away, I felt a strange sense of finality. Maya squeezed my arm in support. You okay? I watched him disappear into the crowd, a feeling of liberation settling in my chest. Better than okay. Maya grinned, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Did you see the partnership offers we got today? 6 major shipping companies want to implement Chainsight immediately. I raised an eyebrow, and that's just the beginning. Maya confirmed, her grin widening. Victoria's worst nightmare is coming true. You're not just competing with Mason Global, you're going to surpass them. 2 weeks later, I sat in my new office, reviewing the latest performance reports. Chainsight was growing faster than anyone had anticipated. Companies were flocking to our platform, drawn by the efficiency improvements and cost savings we offered. Meanwhile, Mason Global's stock continued its downward spiral. Investors were openly questioning whether the company could survive in the changing landscape. I'd heard through industry gossip that Victoria had been forced to step down from the board, though she was fighting it at every turn. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Maya entered, holding up a tablet. You need to see this. She pulled up a news article, and I felt my breath catch as I read the headline. Mason Global Logistics announces major restructuring, CEO James Mason steps down. I blinked, surprised. He's leaving the company? Maya nodded. Word is, he's starting his own venture, something about embracing innovation and new directions in logistics. I leaned back in my chair, absently rubbing my stomach as the baby kicked. His mother must be beside herself. Oh, she is, Maya said with a grin. But that's not all, look at the last paragraph. I read it and felt a mixture of amusement and curiosity. In a surprising move, James Mason has expressed interest in potential collaborations with emerging industry leaders, specifically citing ChainSight's revolutionary approach to supply chain management. Maya raised an eyebrow, her tone teasing. What do you think, should we hear him out? I hesitated, remembering the man I had once loved, the one who had believed in innovation before his mother poisoned everything. Maybe, just maybe, that man was still in there, free from Victoria's suffocating control. I took a deep breath, my voice steady. Set up a meeting, but make it clear, this is business, nothing more. If he wants to work with ChainSight, he'll need to prove himself, just like anyone else. Maya nodded, understanding perfectly. And Victoria? I smiled, thinking of my former mother-in-law and the empire she thought she was protecting. She can watch from the sidelines, I said, a quiet confidence in my voice, as everything she tried to safeguard gets transformed by the nobody from nowhere she threw out in the cold. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, and I placed both hands on my belly. In 2 months, I'd be a mother myself, but unlike Victoria, I would teach my child that true legacy isn't about clinging to the past, it's about having the courage to create something new. Victoria thought she was protecting her son's inheritance when she kicked me out that cold December day. Instead, she had set off a revolution in the very industry she thought she controlled, led by the one person she had underestimated most. As I looked out my office window at the city skyline, where the ChainSight logo now shone as brightly as Mason Global's, I couldn't help but smile. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about soaring higher than your enemies ever thought possible.